What's going on, guys? My name is Noah Cavanaugh, and I have reviewed and tested hundreds of football boots here on YouTube. This is my review of the Ruby Red Edition Mizuno Morelia 2. Now, that may be a little deceiving because this is actually the same name, but rest assured there are some pretty amazing upgrades. So this is the 40th Morelia. This is the 40th anniversary box for the celebration of 40 years of Morelia. We have had this basically the same model for that many years, which is pretty amazing. I love this black and red colorway. It looks absolutely sensational. Same matte black box that you get with every other Mizuno boot, and then you've got this chrome red, this sort of ruby red that matches the boots. I am so excited to see what these look like in person, because oh my days, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely love the ruby red edition of the Neo 4 non-beta that I actually have in my possession down here in the boot wall. It's a boot that I absolutely adore. You guys will have seen reviews on that one. This, of course, is the Morelia 2 Japan in the US 9, UK 8, Euro 42, and 27 centimeters. If you guys are interested in any other sizing information for all of the top-end models, you can pick up my 70-page size guide for free down in the link on my website. All right, let's get into the unboxing here. So getting these out straight away, and you get a new special little string bag, which feels identical to the other ones. It's just got the nice 40th Morelia little logoing on there, which is pretty sweet. So still not going to keep it, but you never know. You never know. All right, here we go. Oh my days. Holy, look at that. That has to be one of the most beautiful football boots I have ever pulled out of a box. It's just incredible. It's just incredible how soft the leather is, lightweight. I mean, I said the same thing basically about these when I took them out of the box, but you gotta admit, this silo, just something about it looks absolutely insane. So some visual changes that you can probably already see from just looking at the boots themselves, but let's jump into getting the rest of these unboxed. Nothing else in there, just a little bit of paper. And we'll throw this bad boy down on the ground here so you guys can kind of see it. And here we go, Morelia 2 made in Japan. Now, of course, this model has been around, not the Morelia 2, but the Morelia in general, this sort of really classic look, has been around for 40 years now. And in celebration of 40 years, they have updated a few things, most of which, well, 3 out of 5. There are 5 kind of distinct main changes, which I won't even really go over that much. I'm going to cover probably 3 of them in the, or maybe 4 of them in this video, that you're going to maybe notice a little bit, but not all that much. So with every Morelia generation, we'll bring the blue one here. This is obviously a very, very well-loved and well-worn pair that I have had for many, many years now. Back in I think I got these back in 2022. So maybe that's not many, many years, but it's, you know, I've had some really good times in these. I absolutely love these boots. Needless to say, it's a full K-leather upper. The Mizuno products are still, especially the made in Japan ones, are still the very, very best quality made in Japan leather. This is absolutely unbelievably soft stuff. It is awesome. It's got the same stitching pattern and same kind of volume as the previous generation. I always say previous generation, but since they're called the Morelia 2, maybe I'll call this one 2.5, just because it does have some pretty significant differences in detailing. One of the main starting points that we'll get to is actually the laces. So if you notice, especially if we take away this stuff, if you notice down here, the laces on the blue one are quite a bit thicker and a lot more kind of basic cottony than the ones here on the red ones. That's because they have shrunk the laces a little bit, made them a little bit more premium feeling, a little bit more modern, sort of bringing them in this boot into sort of the modern, the 2020s really, which is very, very nice. These laces aren't bad necessarily, but for the price point that this boot sits at, which is, depending on where you are in the world, anywhere between about $280 US to about $330 US. That's the made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2 in USD, obviously. the lacing system here was very subpar given the quality of the rest of the boot. And so I'm glad they went with, it still is a cotton-based lace, but they are much thinner, much more robust feeling, and a lot more premium feeling, which is kind of the first point of difference. The next point is we flip the boots over, and if you see in the toe box area and in the rear of the heel, there are no rivets anymore. So there's no physical rivets. The majority of the reason why they did that was to reduce weight. So they actually have taken a couple grams off of this new model, so it is still incredibly light. I mean, these ones are very, very light for what they are, but these ones are just slightly lighter, the 2.5 generation. And I would argue that it's incredibly impressive what they've been able to do with this boot, given that it's still such a classic silo. And in terms of weight savings, you put this up against a Yatagarasu from Adler, you put this up against the Copa Mundial, any of the Diadora Brazil products, any of the all leather, either K leather, Goleo leather, or other, kind of the classic silos, this blows everything else out of the water in terms of weight. I think the closest one is the Adler Yatagarasu, if I'm not mistaken. Even then, this is from an in-hand perspective, these do feel lighter. So they reduced weight by taking out those rivets. Now, one thing that I was sort of assured of in listening to and talking to some of the people at Mizuno is that they actually they took out the rivets because they didn't really need them anymore, and they've developed this boot and tested this boot rigorously with and without rivets, and they could take the rivets out confidently without losing that made in Japan durability. So we will see with time, obviously, with this pair. I don't know if I'll ever get this pair to the point that these ones are at, just because I'm going to be using them. Maybe it'll be a couple years before they actually get really, really worn. I am going to wear these in on a very consistent basis, because I just think the Morelia 2 is such an enjoyable boot to play in, and this red colorway just looks absolutely out of this world. So both of those things are true. That being said, I really would not stress that they have taken the rivets out. I think that is literally just a weight saving thing. I don't think it's going to affect the build. It still is the 24-hour lasting period, all the best of the Mizuno things. Trust that they're not just taking those out just because they can. It is definitely something that is going to be good for the boots in general. Is it a weight saving that you're actually going to notice? No, but hey, it's cool anyway. My favorite of all of the changes is actually something that we had on one of the special edition Morelia 2 DNAs. That was all names that had nothing to do with these. These are actually just called the Morelia DNAs, but you get what I mean. Morelia 2 upper, but one of the main reasons why this boot was so special is because it had a suede liner. So it had a suede liner in the heel area, which I always thought elevated this boot to a way that was a lot better in some respects to this synthetic leather here in the rear. I know a lot of people who had issues with the heel area on this one actually never had issues with the DNA model because of that suede liner. I talk about this a lot with Asics boots. I talk about this a lot with some of the other Mizuno boots that have the suede liner. It just makes an incredible difference in terms of the way that it actually wraps your foot. And as you can see, look at the way, and we'll do this over the overhead camera because you can really tell, look at how narrow and not restrictive, but look how anatomical the DNA looks comparatively to the old Morelia 2. And then we do the same comparison and look what they've done. They've gone for a much more kind of closed, and keep in mind, when I say closed and anatomical, this heel area is still going to mold if you have a really wide heel. It's still going to open up. It's still going to be fine. But the starting shape of this boot, in my opinion, has to be something that's a little more narrow in the heel area, a little bit more restricted, because it just adds a little bit of performance benefit, as well as the main star of the show, in my opinion, which is this beautiful suede liner. It's the same or very similar suede liner that they used on their DNA products, and it just feels incredible. It is so nice and soft. It's grippy. It's going to be great with grip socks. It's going to be great without grip socks. So this is a massive change. And then the other way that they got a little bit of weight saving is they changed the inside liner just ever so slightly. So I'm not sure what the technical details are on those. Frankly, I don't really care so long as the Morelia 2 remains that same kind of plush, beautiful, soft slipper-like sensation on feet. Outside of that, don't really care all that much. What I will be doing though, potentially at some point in this video, I may even bring them out to the field, is to actually get out my handy dandy leather hole punch, which is also red. How cool is that? They match. And what I might do is I actually might punch a hole in these to make the lockdown that much better. On my silver pair of DNAs, I actually did that for a video that came out very recently. You guys can go check that out. And I will show you right now where I would punch the hole. So because this top lace loop doesn't really have, this sort of goes on the top of where the tongue is, which is great, but it is a reasonably sized opening, and this is a very low profile boot, and so I don't feel like I want a little bit more aggression in as far as the lacing system here. So if I get my little pen out, what I would do is I would actually poke a hole right in this corner where the right angle is. So I would poke it right there, so you're kind of in between the two seams, and you've got a little bit of leeway sort of down and angled back into the heel area of where you would tie the runner's knot, and then the runner's knot would basically hold both of these and pull all of this material over on top of your ankle, which I think is kind of that perfect sweet spot. So we'll see. I may bring my handy dandy tool out to the pitch and see how it goes without it first, especially with the suede heel liner. This may actually really help it, whereas I do feel like with the Morelia 2.0 model, it was a boot that really needed the hole punch just because it had this sort of slippery synthetic leather material. But we will see. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into debatably the most comfortable boot ever created. All right, y'all, out on the pitch with the updated Morelia 2. This is I'm gonna really enjoy this. All right, here we go. Boots look absolutely sensational out here. I love this ruby red colorway, as you guys know from the Neo 4 non-beta. This is just an absolutely class color. And there's a reason they're basically all sold out. All right, I imagine, yes, oh yeah, oh my days. These are gonna be very fun to play in. So from a feel perspective, the shape, everything feels basically identical to the previous non-updated model. I'll just say the previous model. And they haven't changed really anything in terms of the overall feel. I might feel it a little bit on ball, some of the changes they've made to the liner of the inside. I think honestly the biggest thing I'm gonna feel is that suede heel liner, which feels fantastic. I can already tell this is gonna be a lot more performance oriented, and honestly, this is one of those situations where I do think that change is gonna completely transform this boot into something that I would very much like to play in a game with, because particularly with how aggressively comfortable this boot is, not aggressive, but aggressively comfortable this boot is, and just the way they wrap the foot. My biggest issue in terms of performance, other than the sole plate, which again, I think the studs need to be shaved down a little bit in terms of circumference, but outside of that, this boot with that suede liner just feels like a fully complete package. So let's get these on the ball, figure out if I can tell any really tangible differences with the upper. Yeah, nope, okay, review over. No, I'm kidding. We're just gonna get through some of these drills though first, and yeah. Yeah, these feel fantastic on feet, man. Again, I do think sole plate feels maybe a little bit, again, I keep saying to Mizuno, man, go down to the same, you don't have to change the sole plate, but get the studs to be the same circumference as the Morelia Neo 4 and Neo 4 Beta. It doesn't have to be that sole plate. You don't have to do a DNA swap, but just make it a little bit more easy to play on AG. I feel like sometimes when I'm playing on AG, I feel like I'm on skates a little bit because they're too big to go on AG, and even on FG sometimes. I'd rather have a little bit of a smaller stud. Get some, start with a little bounce,
and just trying to pass it, get the adductors working a little bit, get warmed up for the shots into that far corner if I can. Ooh, let's go right in the middle of those two if I can. Overall, boots are feeling good. I love the Morelia 2. There we go, that's a little bit better. Let's try the left side. I just actually had a podcast with the Bootcast guys today. There we go. And this was, the Morelia 2 was in our top 4 of all time, boots of all time. It was a very, very fun podcast to do. We basically did a big like round robin, boot against boot, deciding which one's better. And these ones, to no one's surprise, made it into the top 4. Arguably top 3, because it was like 3rd on the list. But Morelia 2 with those extra little suede heel liner. I think the big question that a lot of people are going to be asking is, hey, I have the Morelia 2, should I upgrade? No, wait till those are done and then upgrade. I think this is one of those like mid-generation refresh, as opposed to completely changes the playing experience, because although you could argue that the suede heel liner really does make that much of a difference, which in my opinion it kind of does, it's still not worth a really beautiful pair of past generation Morelia 2s that are still in really good shape. So I would probably recommend just waiting and then getting this. Now, if you're coming from something else, what are you waiting for? Because really anything else in this category is either not as light, not as plush, not as well built, or is just not even worth consideration. So I think I would recommend this boot over pretty much anything else, unless you're looking for a little bit more aggressive leather boot. And then if you have access, Morelia Neo 4 non-beta is the way to go. Outside of that, ooh, that was spicy. Outside of that, Yadagarasu is great, but it's way too difficult to get at this point. So Morelia 2, man, there's a reason people call this, not that shot, but there's a reason people call this the GOAT football boot. So definitely worth checking out. What I can say though about this update is that I can feel exactly 0 differences in the upper, even though they have like changed the upper configuration, or the way that the upper is constructed, different mesh material or different liner, if you will. But there is literally no tangible difference, at least right now on my foot. I don't feel any changes, which is actually a good thing, because there's a reason the Morelia 2 upper is so incredible, because it's fully K-leather. It's got all the things you want. It takes literally 0 break-in time. Like, I am feeling super comfortable. Okay, instead of a random run up, I'm gonna try to hit like a knuckleball up into the top bins. We're gonna change the run up just a little. I just wanna see if I can nail one of these. All right, I gotta focus for a second because I'm not that good. Oh, at least we try. But yeah, needless to say, this upper is absolutely immaculate. 0 break-in time, boots feel excellent. Literally, my only change to this boot will be an extra lace loop for the runner's knot, and that is it. Everything else about this boot, again, other than my critiques about the sole plate as well, but everything else is the best of the best, man. The best of the best. All right, so Morelia 2 update. What is there to say? It's better. It's slightly lighter, which, by the way, you can't tell. It's slightly better on the upper, which you also can't tell. And other than the suede heel liner, there is literally no difference between the last one. Even though they'll say they changed 5 different things, I believe them, because small updates over time make for an increasingly better and better product. But these are, even though you can't tell a difference between these and the previous generation, these are just as light feeling as always. Would highly recommend true to size to get a really good fit that's true to your US or Japan sizing. And overall, this is a near perfect product. It's a near, for what it is a near perfect product. There's a reason why, and I said this on the recent podcast, again, same one that I mentioned earlier with the Bootcast guys. there is a reason why, even though this technically competes with things like a Copa Mundial and a Diadora Brazil, and some of those other classic football boots, there's a reason why all those other ones are like, that's an old man's football boot, that's an old woman's football boot, only the old guys wear that. And this isn't, because they've made small updates, they've made it light, they've made it modern, and they've slowly improved it to the point where genuinely, outside of making additions like the DNA, like the Morelia Proto, like the Wave Cup, and like the cross stitch, what else are you gonna do to this that's gonna make this better than what it already is? It's really that good. And there's nothing else I have to say about this, because you just gotta go try it for yourself. You just gotta, because they're that freaking good. They are that freaking good. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, be awesome, take care. See y'all in the next video.